United States. You can sit down. So Ron, could you introduce yourself? Where are you from?
I'm from California. I was born in Oakland and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. Can all of you hear me okay? In the back, can you hear me okay? Okay. If you want me to repeat something that you don't understand, please raise your hand and make that clear. So I was raised in California virtually all of my life. I moved to Hungary 3 years ago, to Tokai, to be with my wife. I had spent some years in other countries before that. I took 1 year, attended a Scottish university in Scotland as part of an exchange program. And I had traveled widely in Europe on my own because of my interest in traveling and culture and later wine.
Your name is very German. Have you got German origin?
Yeah, my name is definitely of German origin. My father's grandfather came to the United States, went to the United States in the late 1800s and settled, and so there's at least a century of Americanization on my father's side. On my mother's side of the family, and so it was German, Dutch, Scandinavian roots. My mother's side of the family went to the United States in the 1600s, very early on, and settled on the East Coast. And her family came from Great Britain and with Scandinavian roots as well.
Where did you spend your teenager years? Where were you brought up?
I was brought up in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, I was born in Oakland, but my parents lived in an urban area outside the city of Berkeley. And so I was within 30 minutes drive from here to near Chaza, basically to San Francisco. So San Francisco and Berkeley played a major influence in my psychic education, because San Francisco was a major cultural, educational, and of course Berkeley in the 1960s and 1970s was a major revolutionary era in the youth movement and in the hippie movement and so on in the U.S. And so I was surrounded by that as I was growing up.
You talked about your education. Did you like studying? Like these kids, they all like studying.
Say that again? What about education? Well, you know, some studying is more fun than others, but I was a very good student. I got mostly A's in all of my classes. Even the classes I didn't like, I just, you know, was a good student, and my parents, thankfully, had brought me up with the idea that education is good for you. You may not like what you're learning right now, but in all honesty, down the road, this is them telling me, my mother, by the way, my mother has a PhD. She returned to university and received her PhD in child psychology after having 8 children.
So I
hope you understood what that meant. 8 children.
You have 7 brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have lots of brothers and sisters. And so, yes, so clearly her example showed me that education was something to be strived for. And I was a good student, and I enjoyed learning, and I was really good at it. So I encourage you all here, I mean, if there's one thing that you should take away with you, it's that you should continue to learn the rest of your lives, because you will need it. I don't care what kind of career you're in or what kind of job you're going to be doing. I mean, it's what's allowed me to have a very lengthy career. It's allowed me to continue my career here in Hungary. It's because I learned a lot when I was young, and I kept learning. So learn a lot when you're young and keep learning. And let me just give you another example. I was reading this morning a study that was published in association with some researchers from Oxford University. It was about the U.S. job market and about jobs that are going to be terminated by new ways of doing things, by greater productivity, by software, by robots. And it said this is pretty astounding, that within the next 10 to 20 years in the United States, 47%, basically half, of all jobs that people are doing today, and the United States is a huge country with 100 million people in the workforce, 50 million jobs are going to disappear. And the same is going to happen in Hungary, and in Europe, and in China, and so on. Half of all the jobs that people have are going to disappear. What does that mean, and why? Well, it means you're going to have to keep learning to acquire and pick up new skills in order to compete. And the summary of this report that I was having a look at this morning, and I was pretty much astounded by, said that those people who specialize and learn very specific, a profession that has a degree of influence and knowledge that cannot be replicated by a machine simply, are going to maintain their jobs. But you're going to have to continue to learn. And it's in the second thing it said is specialize and be creative. In other words, keep your mind open. Keep your mind open to learning. I can give you 50 examples from my life where when I continued to learn and to grow in my profession, my career, it brought me new customers, it brought me more money, it brought me more recognition, it brought me more of everything that I was working for. But I won't, because that's long and boring. But I will tell you from experience that I couldn't be living here successfully in Hungary now and continuing my profession happily, to the degree that it satisfies me. I'm not talking only about money, because money is only part of the thing. But doing something that I love to do in a country in which I didn't grow up and barely speak the language, but I'm able to do it from here. And it's not just because of the internet, it's because I am willing to adapt. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. That's why I said earlier, continue your education, learn what you can, do a great job at it, and continue to learn forever. That is your future. Otherwise, you will be out of work, out of the future, and very unhappy. And if there's one thing that nobody likes to hear other people do, it's complain. So please don't complain around me. Don't complain to other people. Nobody likes to hear it. If you're upset with your job, with your life, change it. Change it. Move. Change careers. Change your friends. Change your house. Change your attitude.
Ron, wow. Did you always know that you want to be a wine expert?
No, my parents didn't drink at all. No alcoholic beverages in the house. I think I saw my father in my life up until the point that I discovered wine drink one beer in front of me. That's not much, is it? Some of you have had a beer already before breakfast. That's a joke. I discovered wine by working in restaurants in the United States. I worked in good restaurants where wine was served with dinner. And I was working because I wanted money. I had 7 brothers and sisters and parents who could barely afford the clothes on my back. So if I wanted money, I had to get it myself. I chose to work. Some people do other things. I chose to work. And I started working in restaurants as a dishwasher. I worked my way up, and eventually I was in the front of the house, serving customers. And I saw that most every table had wine. They were drinking wine for dinners. It was a nice restaurant. The food was good. It was not an inexpensive restaurant. And one thing led to another. And eventually I was serving wines myself, and customers were asking me questions about wine. And then, just before that, I had gone and spent a year in Scotland attending the university that I mentioned to you. And I had traveled widely throughout Europe at the time. I'd spent more than 4 months just simply traveling. During that time. And I traveled to Greece, to Turkey, etc. And virtually the entire Mediterranean basin, people drank wine. And, I was from California. There was a growing wine industry there. And the San Francisco Bay Area was quite a sophisticated area commercially, and they were picking up the wine experience with meals. And I was young and impressionable, and I began to absorb knowledge, information. I began to drink and to taste wine, and a whole new world opened up for me that I discovered it myself. Nobody introduced it to me, and my job introduced it to me, but my parents didn't. That's a question I'm frequently asked is, didn't your parents have some influence on you in that regard? Actually, they had a negative influence. They didn't like it when I was first, discovering wines. They said, "You spent $5 on a bottle of wine?" This is at a time when $5 could buy you probably 20 bottles of Coca-Cola.
So from California, you moved to Hungary, to the east part, to Tokaj. How do you do your job from here?
How do
you do your job?
Well, there's several ways I do it. Number one is I continue to write and publish articles in English online in the United States. That's primarily where I publish. And I can do a lot of my research online. I travel widely in Europe. I go to vineyards, I taste. And I also return to the United States 2 or 3 times a year in order to come up to date with wines and restaurants there. So I have to work a little bit harder than when I was stationed in the Napa Valley in California, but I'm happy, and that's the most important thing. You know, it's a little harder work for me. It takes much more time to get accomplished what I used to do. I earn a lot less money, but I'm happy. And that's the other point I want to make to you. Money doesn't bring happiness, otherwise why do all these zillionaires commit suicide and murder and so forth and so on? I mean, money doesn't buy you happiness. Doing what you do and being around people that you like and love is what brings you happiness. And if you think otherwise, you better change your mind before going out into the world, because you're going to be wasting your life.
How did a wine expert meet his wife? Is it obvious that you meet on a wine event? How did you meet wine?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I thought you were asking about meeting other wine professionals. Yeah, I mean, I've met and tasted with many of the top wine professionals in the world. I mean, you may not know this, but let me just toot my own horn for a little bit. I have 2 degrees that only 3 other people in the world have. I have, very specialized wine degrees that, are instantly recognizable around the world. One is called Master of Wine, and I was the 3rd American to achieve that. And
there are 6 people on the world like you.
Well, the other degree is Master Sommelier, and I was the 6th American to achieve that. But I was the first person in the world to have both titles. And 20 years later, only 3 other people have also achieved that status. So I have a certain point of view about wine that crosses international borders. And my job requires me to think and to taste and to be honest, and it doesn't depend upon the country that I reside in. So that's how I can do my job here. The internet allows me to do a lot. Skype, etc., email. I'm on email every day. I scan, I have 10, 15 sites that I scan every day for news to see what's going on. I know tons of people. I can send emails to people to find out more information. I'm talking about winemakers, I'm talking about critics, I'm talking about people who own wineries in 20 or 30 different countries around the world. Many of them know me on a first-name basis because when I was in Napa, for example, they would come by my office, or I would visit their wineries. And I visited well over 1,000 wineries in my life. I mean,
how many?
Over 1,000.
Wineries?
Yeah, over 1,000, all around the world. I try to visit new wineries every year to learn, to keep growing, because, as I said before, if you don't keep growing and keep learning in whatever profession you choose, you're dead. It's over. And it's no fun either. If you just sit there and your job, whatever it is, and say, God, I'm bored, get a new job. Change your attitude. Change your life.
When did you move to Tokaj? How long ago?
3 years, 3.5. I moved in May 19th of 2010.
And what's your image of the Hungarian teenagers? Have you met any of them?
I think teenagers around the world have a lot in common. So I wouldn't only single out Hungarians. I would say everybody's trying to be like everybody else, and that's very obvious to me. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's part of the globalization of culture and communications. I mean, people dress here a lot like they do, and we compare notes, my wife and I, when we go to other countries such as Italy or France or Germany. People are, there's a certain image that the youth culture is aspiring to, and it's not necessarily Hungarian. it's international. That's my answer.
You have 2 children, it's tiny. They are very young now. How old are they?
One is 13 months old, Richie, and Camila is a little over 3 years old. We dropped her off at Ovi before we came.
How do you imagine their future?
Their future?
Their future.
Well, I mean, the future is what you make it, you know? The world has a lot of great things in it. I mean, the world is amazing. It has a lot of bad things in it. We have to live our lives trying to minimize the bad in our lives as a society, as culture. For example, some things that bother me that I see in Hungary and other countries, but I'll just mention this because it pops to mind, is when people litter, when people throw stuff out the window, throw garbage out the window. Well, in the United States, pretty much we got over that about 20, 30 years ago. The society evolved and people realized it's bad. Why throw your shit in the street, you know? And somebody else is going to have to clean it up. It shows you have no respect for yourself or the community in which you live, so don't do it, you know? But in the U.S., people got over that. But that's one thing that irritates me. I mean, why don't Hungarians take more pride in their country? Yeah, things are bad, but change them. Don't blame the country. Don't shit on your own country. I mean, do something about it. Be positive. Change things. You know? Don't hurt other people. Be good to each other. That's what life is about.
So your main idea is to be all the time positive.
Well, try to be. I mean, it's impossible because, of course, you know, it's easier for me to say, yeah, be positive all the time. But I'm not a preacher, you know, and I lose my temper, you know, I do all the bad things, but I try to minimize it, and I've worked on myself, my life, all my life, you know, and I continue to. And my wife continues to help me. Now, we all lose it sometimes. But the thing is to try not to lose it very much and try not to hurt other people. But, you know, just don't hurt other people. Don't hurt the environment. It's all we've got. I mean, there's only this little earth. Don't pollute it. You know, don't pollute it. Recycle. That's another thing that bothered me when I first got here. There was very little awareness of recycling. Where's all your garbage going to go if you don't recycle? You know, it's going to fill up oceans and oceans and oceans. You know, be good to your environment. It'll be good to you back. You know, it'll last longer. Maybe if you have children, they care about that. You'll be able to pass along the earth in a cleaner state than when you first arrived here. That's my ideal. So be aware. Don't litter. Don't always recycle. You know, reuse things. Give them away. You know, don't just throw all the plastic. Don't burn the plastic. I mean, that's crazy.
And I heard that you are also very careful about what you eat. Not only what you drink, but what you eat. Can you continue it in Hungary?
Yeah. The question is a great one because nutrition is the health of the body, and the health of the body is the health of the mind. And you know, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that the U.S. is a better place or a better society because there's major problems in the U.S. today. Anybody of you who follows the news know that. So lots of countries have problems. But in the U.S. there's an awareness of health that I simply don't find in this country. What you are when you eat. If you eat garbage, you're going to look like garbage and feel like garbage. You know, you should be really. One should be. I'm not saying you, because some of you in this room are probably eating much better than I am. But I'm very careful about. I avoid all junk food. I avoid all fast food restaurants, and I avoid all soda. I've drunk one soda, one Coca-Cola in the last 30 years. That's it. It's bad for you. You guys don't smoke. That's another thing. I'm just shocked at how many people smoke here.
Many smoke here.
It's astounding. You're killing yourself. Where is your mind? Where is your mind? Anybody that smokes, you should look at the inside of your lungs. You think it's cool to smoke? I think it's stupid to smoke. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen on the planet. You want to take care of your health, don't smoke. You want to take care of your health, avoid all sodas, period. Avoid fast food, period. Deep fried food, period. Eat lots of fruits and vegetables and salads and so on. And you'll live longer, and you'll feel better, and you'll do better work, you'll be much more creative. Your mind will feel better, your body will feel better. These are things that I've learned in the last 30 years. I had to learn the hard way. I ate just like many people in this room when I was young. My mother had no concept of nutrition and health. She was a terrible cook.
Is Heidi a good cook?
She's great. Tony's wonderful. So watch what you eat. Make it balanced, you know?
Do you cook or does she do the cooking?
I do the bulk of the cooking, but Tony does the bulk of the dessert making. She's the baker in the household.
And can you talk about her job? What does Heidi do? If she has a diploma of English teacher and French teacher, but she's not a teacher.
She's not a teacher anymore. Number one, Heidi is a mother, and she's a great mother. Anybody knows who has children, or is around children, or has babysat children, knows that 2 young children under the age of 4 take a huge amount of time and effort. So Heidi's amazing. That takes a huge amount of her time. She has a huge. Secondly, she's my wife, and that takes a huge amount of time. I'm not done. But then she also has family businesses that she's involved in. She's the sales director for family winery első, and she's involved in all aspects of receiving guests at the winery for tastings and so on. That takes a lot of time. And by the way, we're already up to 12 hours a day just with those 3 things: being a wife, being a mother, and taking care of első. And how many hours a day do you work, or are you in school and complaining about it? The third thing she does is she manages Hagel Roger, the coffee house that her family just opened in the last 2 months. And I encourage you all to come by because I am the roaster. I roast the coffee in the coffee house. By the way, I'll just quickly aside. So she also runs the Hagel Roger, which is another 2 to 4 hours a day. So she's working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you see circles under her eyes, you'll understand why. But she does a great job at all of those things. The last thing I'll say is the coffee house, by the way, you're lucky to have it in Tokai. It could be in San Francisco, and it would, exactly as it is today, and be a spectacular success. It could be in Moscow, it could be in Beijing, it could be in Tokyo. It's an international style coffee house that has superb coffee and service. So please come by.
The best place, thank you.
I roast the coffee. Heidi, of course, managed and set up the entire business. We have the greatest hot chocolate I've ever had in my life because it's my recipe.
The hot chocolate?
Yeah.
There are many kids who have tried your hot chocolate here.
Yes. Heidi last night baked, or was it this morning? Did you bake it this morning? She baked already. She baked something for the coffee shop this morning. She was up at 6 a.m. I mean, she went to bed at 10 and up at 6, and she works a lot.
Thank you, Ron. It's really a big honor that you could come here. And we
My
wish
pleasure.
you many happiness here in Tokai.
Thank you.